My name's Sandy Beach, and I'm an alcoholic. How you doing? And welcome, everybody, to the convention. And I'll tell you, it's really nice to see so many of us here, and not to smell any booze. I can't smell any from up here, anyway. And it really is great to see this many drunks in one room on a Friday night, your own choice. I don't know anybody who's, well, a couple of you are probably here under duress, but most of us are here through our own choice, and God, it's really nice. And it's good to be at the Virginia State Convention, and I feel really comfortable because, well, in other ways I feel nervous rather than being out of state somewhere. Too many of you here know me. I'm going to have to stick to my story, you know, and that makes for a shorter talk than I'm used to giving, so we'll be out of here in about 20 minutes. Anyway, my name is Sandy, and I'm an alcoholic, and I came into AA in 1964, and I haven't been drunk since my first meeting, and I owe it all to not drinking. And I always like to get that... I always like to get that out of the way. We got to get the basics over with, and then we can discuss some of the aspects of the program. But you won't be around to discuss any of the program unless you get the basics down pat, and that's what that not drinking part is. And I realize if you're new, that comes as a hell of a shock. That God, not drinking? What do you mean? But that seems to be where it's at. It seems to be necessary, in my opinion, that I not drink in order to stay alive. So that I can work on the steps so that I won't have to drink. And I end up with a big circle there that there doesn't seem to be anything in it that I can leave out. And at least that's how the conclusion I've come to after listening to a lot of wise people around this program at lots and lots of meetings. It's customary to talk a little bit about, you know, how we were before and what happened with our drinking, and then what happened since we came into AA. And the best place to start is at the beginning, which for me was up in New England in the state of Connecticut, where I was born. And if I recall, even my birth terrified me, and I felt nervous about the world as soon as I got in here, and then some guy was slapping me around, and I don't know, it's just... I never did think the world was such a great place to be. That was one of my problems. And as I was growing up, I always had that feeling that, what the hell's going on around here? Everybody else knows what's going around. Well, I don't know what's going on. That was sort of how I felt. But on the other hand, I never could tell anybody this because I saw that all of you had the world figured out. Because whenever I asked you how you were doing, you said, fine. And... I was waiting to meet somebody who was going to say, oh, I don't know, I don't understand what's going on. I said, God damn. Unless you and I get together, at least there's two of us that don't understand what's going on. We can find out. And so, but I was just as guilty as the rest of you because I figured, hell, if nobody else is as screwed up as I am, I better pretend that I got it figured out too. So I have to confess, whenever he asked me how I was doing, I said, fine. And I started working on trying to figure out what was going on. Why, what are people, and what is this all about? And along about that age, I was, or about the age of 7 or somewhere in there, I was given some assistance in my dilemma and in my quest for knowledge about what the big picture was. You know how you always sit around in your room at night trying to scare the hell out of yourself going to sleep, figuring out what's going on, and my assistance came from the Catholic Church. Those of you that recall what kind of assistance you get there. And I went in, and the nuns got a hold of me and said, well, you look troubled, little boy. You having a problem figuring the world out? And I said, yeah, I am. Well, so let us straighten you out right now. You're in trouble. That's what the thing is. And your problem is that you sin a lot. And you were born with sin, and there's a place you're going to go, and the odds on you not making it are very, very slim. The best you can hope for is a pardon at some later date, and hope that makes you feel a little more comfortable while you're here on Earth. Okay? So I learned that people were essentially evil, and that we were all sinners and so on down, and that I remember my neighborhood in particular seemed to have a lot of impure thoughts that floated around that neighborhood, and they came into my house a lot, and in my room, personally, into my room, and couldn't get them out of there. They kept sneaking in, and I knew that when these showed on the scene, that they were racking those years up in purgatory, and boy, you were in trouble from that. So what I'm trying to share with you is that at a very young age, I got a very close relationship with our lifelong friend, guilt. We got so close that it took about 8 years in AA to get it off of my back. That seems to be the first one to attach itself to us. And very often it's the last one we can get rid of, in spite of our efforts at working the steps, was that wonderful relationship with guilt, which really enables us to get into advanced self-centeredness. I really think that those of you that didn't get that guilt thing, you really never got your PhD in self-centeredness, even though you were an alcoholic. That guilt was the extra bonus that enabled you to claim responsibility for World War II and things like that. Oh, if I had only done this, I could have saved all that. And neighborhood tragedies, illnesses, low grades, high grades, whatever was going on. If you are guilty, you assume the responsibility for these things. And, of course, you don't tell anybody. It's your own little secret. You wouldn't want to share that with anybody. Sharing, I found, was a rather dangerous thing. This would be a way of allowing people into your inner space, and since they're all evil, they would destroy you. So there's no sense allowing anyone in there, and the best way to do that is to pretend to be whatever you thought they might like you to be. And I'm just trying to sort of give you a flavor of how well organized I was before drinking came along. This is when my brain was working clearly. I was figuring out... This is how I figured the world out. I'm just sharing you this little kid. He's growing along and he's getting to be a teenager, and more things are going wrong, more guilt, lots of problems. And when I thought about a higher power, and I do have to talk about God as I used to understand Him, I really became quite terrified. I never had any relationship that I felt comfortable in. It was a sort of a week-to-week affair where I would go in and try and unload some of this guilt, only to be told that, well, you're just going to have to try a little bit harder. You seem to be not doing better each year, but you're doing worse. And that was sort of the feeling I had. And I just hoped to live to be around 300. That was what I wanted to do, because I knew once I died that it was all over. I mean, that was the end of the ball game. And so I, kind of looked at life, as bad as it was. I had to make the most of it, because it was going to really get bad later on. I don't think I had close friends. As I've grown to know some friends since I've been in AA. I thought I had friends, but I realized that they were just people who I could hang around and spend time with, get some amusements, joking around, that kind of stuff. But anything that was seriously troubling me, I handled myself. That was the ground rule, because if I let anybody know that I had problems, that would be a sign of weakness. And somehow I had a feeling that in this world, other people didn't like weak people. They liked you to have it all together. They liked you to just say, yeah, I'm fine and nothing bothers me, and I'm a man and I'm tough and I can handle all these things. And I think I saw this in novels that I read. I saw it I heard it on the radio, saw it in movies, and there was my favorite example of the Western hero that lived out in the desert with his horse, and whenever the townsfolk had the bad guys in there, they went out and got this guy. He was the Roy Rogers Lone Ranger, whoever it was. And he'd come into town and have a couple of drinks and shoot the guy. And then he'd go back out and into the desert. And everybody'd say, "Now, thank God for that man. Who was that man? I want to thank him. Now, there goes a real man." And, that's what I identified with. It was the self-sufficient human being. And it wasn't until I was about 33 or 4 that I realized how weird it is to live alone in the desert with a horse. And so those were my heroes. They were the guys, the Marines in the World War II movies that just didn't never need anybody. They just seemed to have some of that strength that came from an exertion of willpower and just sheer determination. And that's the way the country was founded, the free enterprise system, the competition, and there's only going to be one winner. That's the way I looked at it. And sorry about you, but I've got to get you before you get me. And, that's the way it seemed to be organized in my head, and I never questioned it too much. That's just the way I assumed everything was. And I realize when we come into AA and they say our old ideas availed us nothing, that those are but a few of the old ideas that have to go if I'm going to get comfortable. Because just because I sober up isn't going to make me comfortable if I still think that all of those things are true. And as Charlie Bruton used to say, that great friend of mine, many of you knew him around here, and I just love some of his wisdom. He used to talk about, it isn't so much the things that you don't know, but rather it's knowing things that just ain't so. And man, that's what I had. Was a lot of things that just weren't so. And that's what I was dealing with as the facts about me, about a higher power, and about other people. And I guess that's about all the relationships there are between me, between other people, and a higher power. And all of those were wrong. All of those were quite ill-founded. They were immature, but they weren't my fault. They weren't my fault. They just happened to get developed that way through circumstance, through the way I heard things, whatever it was. This is how I saw the world. And as you can see, I saw it as a rather uncomfortable place to exist. I had felt uncomfortable with people. I did not like eyeballs looking at me. This would have driven me crazy to ever have to stand up in front of this many people where they were looking at me, because I knew that one of you really knew. I knew that in a crowd this big, there was that extra sensory perception person who would look inside and see all of the problems and say, when you say you're fine, you're lying. That's what I was worried about, that person that could see the real truth inside of me. And then I knew I'd be out, that I wouldn't be accepted anywhere. So I found the world kind of hostile and a little uptight most of the time. And in spite of that, I remember graduating from prep school. In my yearbook, it says, best-natured. I want to tell you something about best-natured. I bet there's a lot of best-natured in this audience. You know what best-natured is? A people pleaser. That's what a best-natured is. They're always smiling. Hi. Geez, that guy never has any problems. Look at that. He's always nice around everybody. Isn't that nice? Damn right I didn't have any problems. I was hiding them from you all. Didn't want you to know that. And I got out of there and went into college in my hometown. And then all of you brilliant people from around the country showed up there, and I felt rather insecure. And around age 19, I attended some social function that made me particularly uptight, and they were passing drinks around. And I just took one off a tray. I had decided that there was two kinds of pressure. One was peer pressure, and the other one was church pressure. And in this instance, the peer pressure was the strongest. I was trying to go to age 21 to get some extra dispensation. I think I'd get about 300 years off in purgatory by holding out on this drinking until I was 21. I forget the details of that stuff, but I was in the middle of one of those deals. Figured I'd need it. But the peer pressure was greater. What do you mean you don't drink? We drink in this class. You're going to ruin our record as a freshman class here, and all that kind of stuff. And besides, all the people in the room, whatever this little social event, made me quite nervous and ill at ease. And I felt them staring at me. I felt that feeling, who invited that guy? What's he doing over there? You could see them talking to each other, and you knew damn well they were talking about you. What else was there to talk about? You just see them in the corner of the room, and then a guy would walk away and talk. You knew that they were quite upset that I was there. So I took this drink, and I can remember the anticipation based on what other people had shared with me about alcohol. I expected to have a change in how I felt. That was my anticipation. But I drank the whiskey down, and there was no change. I didn't feel any different at all. But the people in the room changed. Now, there was the difference. The people in the room changed. I drank the whiskey, and they started smiling. I drank the whiskey, and they became friendly. And I drank the whiskey, and they loved me. And I went, damn, is this nice. And I found alcohol was a way of changing the world that I lived in. And without really changing any of those people, I was changing the world from the inside out. I poured it in, and then somehow it caused me to see the world in a different way. And it was a much better world. Now, here we had something that was acceptable. Here we had something that a guy could really live in. I mean, this was all right. I didn't resent being alive anymore. I thought this was all right. So this is what it's all about. No wonder that everybody's talking about what a pleasant world it is. Now I see what they're talking about. There is that sense of brotherly love. There is that sense of being at peace with yourself and with God and with other people. This is what this is all about. And I said, boy, am I lucky to have discovered alcohol as a vehicle of getting into the real world, where this is what I've read about in the Bible and Scripture. This is what they're talking about. Thank God I finally got it. Well, it's too bad I didn't start when I was 8. Wasted all that time in that phony world of people disliking each other and all those hypocrites. This is where it's at, and I loved it. And I think that very night I made a decision to spend as much time as possible in that world. However you could get there and stay there. Now, I have to admit that God gave me a full briefing that first night about alcoholism. I had I had a lot of practice in room spinning, throwing up, dry heaves, hot and cold sweats the next day, little shaky leg muscles, back muscles, the itchies. I even had the itchies in school all the next day. All that skin, and it jumps around, and you're looking, and there's nothing there, and you're going around, and then it got really hot, and then it got cold, and then I started having tastes in my mouth I had never experienced before. Where did that come from? And then you sit around just swallowing like mad because you know you're going to throw up. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You just sit there, swallow. Maybe I'll make it for another hour. So, and I also had that whole day, I had that marvelous experience of focusing 100% of my energy on just trying to stay where I was. That's it. Hey. Okay. And that's when your productivity goes way down. You don't even dare let go of the chair to take notes. Oh. I lose my balance. So I see some of you have sat on those same chairs trying to stay where you are, So that was my first experience with alcohol, and then right with that first experience came my, I think, the basic lie that I told myself until I came into AA. They all happened all on the first day, so I guess I'm a primary alcoholic by any textbook standard, which, as you can see, I drank socially for 10 or 15 minutes, Phew. Crossed the line, and little did I know, but I had just experienced my best day drinking. And I was on that trail, you know. So we need to explain all this. You got to explain this. And I can remember I always have had an inner dialogue that goes on between my brain and my body. I don't know if any of you have that particular thing, but these various organs and the liver and the stomach and the central nervous system, they have a whole life of their own, and they run around in there. I don't never know what the hell they're doing. But they send signals up to the brain, okay, go to the bathroom, okay, we're hungry, okay, other things, and that's it, etc., whatever you want to say. And then the brain, you know, sort of takes all this information and makes decisions about it. Well, this went on after my first night drinking when the crowd came back and said, okay, we're going to go out drinking again. Do you want to go with us? And, you know, the whole central nervous system and every organ and muscle and everything said no. That was just flat out no. They were still working on the booze that was in there the night before. There was still some shaking going on. There was a little rattling, rolling the stomach, and everything was going. They said no. But the brain said, now, wait a minute, you guys. We got to think this over a minute. Let's think this through now. Wait a minute. Now, I understand we've had a little problem. We've had some discomfort. We've had a little throwing up and bad nausea and all that. But when you really step back and look at this, that's a small price to pay for that hour you had last night. And that was the decision that I made that night, and that's the one I used until I come into AA. No matter what I got into, what kind of trouble it was, the next day when this confrontation took place, some of us call it our conscience, whatever it may be, there I was, and I had to explain it. I had to explain why I just spent 2 nights in jail in Tijuana. My teeth were knocked out again. I lost $350. I was 2 days late getting back to the base. And what did I think about all that? And there was this little voice going, yes, it is an inconvenience, but it's a small price to pay for the fantastic time that you probably had on Friday and Saturday night, and as soon as you get back and find the guys you were with and lead them through the weekend so that they recreate it for you in your blackouts, then you will be assured that you had a good time. So I'd go back, find these guys, and we'd say, hey, what about Friday night? And you know how you lead somebody through because you don't want to tell them you don't remember, and then they would say, yeah, and then you jumped on the table and you swang over there and you did that. And I said, oh, then I had a good time. And they said, you had a marvelous time. And I would say to myself, well, thank God I paid a hell of a price for that good time. And now I was balancing the equation with a rumor that I had had a good time. And this is some form of lack of soundness of mind by any interpretation of the second step. I was losing choice. I don't know. I may have lost choice over alcohol before I ever had any. I mean, I feel like I was a setup waiting to happen as far as being an alcoholic. I had all the ingredients, and then the alcohol came, and boy, that was the thing. That was the answer to all of these problems. And once I found this answer, I never looked for any others. And I think that's another way of saying I stopped growing up. Once you find the solution to emotional problems, you stop looking for other solutions. And in my case, I found vodka. And that worked. When all else failed, you bought a bottle of vodka and drank it. I have to throw that in. There may be maybe some non-alcoholics here, and they get some problems, and they go home and buy a bottle of vodka, and nothing happens. You have to drink it. Okay. But I think that's right. I think that's why we stopped maturing. We got all the answers for $3. Other people spend years. They spend all their teenage 20s trying to get this stuff together, learn what emotions are all about, learn what their feelings are, try and figure out what people are about and what a higher power is and what the world is and what principles are. You know, what are principles that you can have faith in? Something you can turn to. Where do you turn to in times of stress? How do you handle all these things? Well, easy. Vodka. What the hell's the problem? What are you wasting all those years maturing for when you can buy vodka? Why, why do that? That's why we all were partying so much. All the people were trying to mature. Some of them stayed home on Saturday night just to mature. But we didn't have to mess around with that stuff because we had vodka. And whatever it was, we could solve it that way. We got upset, we drank. We were excited, wanted to celebrate, we drank. We felt sick, ill, drank. You had a toothache, you drink. Then eventually you might go to the dentist. But if you couldn't find a dentist, just keep drinking. Just keep drinking. You can always solve problems from the short term with alcohol. Boy, can you live from minute to minute, a day at a time. Alcohol is the day at a time routine if I ever saw it. Just marvelous short-term answer to all problems. None of them ever solved. Just short-term relief. How do I solve the anxiety I am experiencing over the phone ringing? Well, I will have a drink and then another drink, and if it's still ringing, I'll answer it. Then after the fourth drink, I used to wish it would ring because I was so brave now. I can. Who do I care who it is? I'm never going to pay you that money. Bang. Remember all that marvelous courage that we had with that. So that was what I had going there. It was my outlook on life. And so I never did look at what it meant to be a person, what it means to have feelings, what character defects are. I didn't need to do that. I had alcohol. I could get on with living. So that's what I was doing. Now, I had to earn money in order to be an alcoholic. You realize that's a necessity. And I think this is the only variety or the only differences that exist in AA is how we earned our drinking money. Other than that, we're all the same. And, we have people that are lawyers and movie producers, television producers over here, and writers and so on. So I was hanging around after graduation, making big plans, and a bunch of guys were drinking beer and going down to join the Marine Corps, which always goes together, believe me. And so that's what I did. I followed them down, and we went in there, and I don't know, 13 years later, the Marine Corps and I parted company. So you can see that was a long Saturday afternoon. And that happened after I was in AA. I forget to tell this part of it sometimes, but I had been in AA, I think 2 years when I got passed over for the second time in the Marine Corps, and I was out. And I said, what the hell's going on here? I remember going back to the steps. I always went back to the steps when I have a problem or a complaint. Hey, what's this higher power stuff? Hey, I'm sober. I'm going to meetings every night. Now I'm out. Said, I drank all those years. There wasn't any problem. I had a few resentments, a couple of days, weeks, and months filled with self-pity, trying to figure out how this injustice could take place and how this awful thing could happen. And I guess it had been about 3 months. I was running around trying to find a job up in Arlington. I had 6 children to feed, and I didn't have any money, and blah, blah, typical story. And I looked in the Washington Post, and there was a little article on about page 3, and it described how a group of officers from Quantico that were an instruction team that I was on flew into a mountain out in Denver, and they were all killed. And I read that, and I realized that if I had had my way, I would have been on a plane. Now, when you read that and you have just been alone in the room with God, bitching like hell, you know that He knows that you just read that article. And you want to see a guy squirming around in his chair. Well, wait a minute now. Listen, God, I never liked the Marine Corps at all. I just liked their airplanes. I didn't like them. And hell, I like this sitting around here. I'm very happy with him. And he didn't let me off the hook at all. He just said, read that article again. I'm reading the article. Got it. So it's funny how things happen to us, and then later on we find out why. If we don't drink. If we drink, we never find out why. We just have a whole long series of bad episodes that we bitch at the bar to other people who've had a series of bad episodes who are sharing them with us. And then we both agree what a rotten world it is. And none of us were ever sober long enough to find out why some of those bad things happened. And then find out they really weren't so bad after all. That they were a logical step in something better that was going to come our way if we had any faith. And there was lessons to be learned in some of those things. And it's hard to keep them, though. I learned them. And I got them deep down inside, and then I blow it the next time it comes along. I don't know if any of you have that problem, but I get the program down, and then it disappears. And I don't understand. Who wrote this stupid thing? I know it doesn't work today. Shake the book and turn it around and read it again and throw the whole thing in the wastebasket. I said, I knew that damn stuff didn't work. Then those are the days. Boy, those are the days that really test us. To see if we can come back the next day and get it all together again. And it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to have those bad days, if we don't drink anyway, just to see what they feel like. They kind of make us appreciate those good days. Anyways, like I say, my story does differ from maybe somebody else's in what I was doing to earn my money to buy vodka. And I was in the Marine Corps, and I ended up flying airplanes for them, and I did that for about 11 years. And I flew around, was having big, exciting, all these great stories we can tell about the fighter airplanes and being overseas and zipping around, and oh boy, isn't this exciting? And I guess it was. But what was really going on was being an alcoholic. That's what was really going on. That's what I could not deny. That's what was progressing. That's what was really growing. The rest of me was coming apart. I may have appeared on the outside to be moving along to possibly get a few promotions. I only got 2. Then others got my share of the remaining promotions. So I didn't get promoted, but I did get resentment, which keep you busy. Both of them will keep you busy. So I don't have anything really exciting to tell you about airplanes. You just get in them and fly around and come back and you get flight pay. And that's about it. Near the end of my flying, I did have some exciting things to tell you about it. That's when I started having withdrawals. And flying got a little more exciting then. And flying got a little more exciting then. In that I developed near the end of my flying career a fear of getting in the plane with the pilot. There was a basic knowledge that I had firsthand of this guy's dwindling ability. And I became rather uncomfortable about this because there was me, the pilot, and then there was me, the human being, whose life was in jeopardy with this guy's deteriorating skills. And some of those things are questionable that they're going to land anyway, and you put a guy in there who's worrying about his vision going and heart palpitations and sweats and all that, and you got a bad combination by anybody's imagination. And so this led me, after a few months of some really close calls and great fear that I was going to pass out because I had never gotten into daily drinking. So you got to realize now that I was getting really drunk and then trying to not drink all day. And this was becoming excruciating. The body was not going along with this. That's when the marvelous conflict between the body and the brain really started developing, was over the daily drink. I mean, the drinking during the daytime. That was not an intellectual decision. I don't think many alcoholics really intellectually decided, well, I think a real mature man in his late 20s and early 30s should start drinking vodka in the morning. You know, as an intellectual basis. I don't think it comes that way. I think it comes about in the late afternoons when there's about 2 hours to go until you leave and you're going to go get your fix. I think that's when it starts. And the body suddenly realizes that 2 hours on this particular day may be a little too long to wait. And that so it starts going, whatever we did last night, we did to excess, and we're in worse shape today than we've ever been. And so today is an exception, and we want to tell you that there's problems down here. And the brain is working away on some legal papers or something up there. He doesn't hear all that. And so they got to get its attention. And so they start some acid flowing through the stomach. And, oh, my God, he gets a little bit of that. And then maybe they'll take his pen he's trying to make some notes with and start jiggling it around, and he can't even get his hand. What the hell's going on here? And once the body gets our attention, it says, we're in trouble down here. That's what's going on. We are coming apart. There's something wrong, and we think that alcohol can fix it. So why don't we, you and I, get up and leave work and go get a drink? That's our plan. And, boy, the body is all sold on the plan. But the brain has to explain all this to the colonel who's sitting in the next office, who isn't about to understand what's going on inside the body. And so I got to come up with a reason for leaving. And I can remember fighting this. And the process was a rather long one, where I would say, no, I can't give in to this. I got to stick it out to the end of the workday. And then there came a time when the body finally gave a couple of violent arm shakes or a couple of leg twists or something that created the sense that there was a real emergency, and I finally had to leave early. It was that desperate. And I can remember getting in my car and going over to the club and walking in, and of course you can never admit the truth to anyone. And as I approached the bar, the body found out about the booze because the eyes send the information down. And so everything inside knew that we were getting close. They knew it. They said, oh, wow. And it was almost like the dog in the Alpo commercial. And Ed McMahon is holding that food up there, and the dog is shaking, and he knows any second he's going to have everything is going to be all right. And that's what they felt like inside. They just knew. Well, there it is. We're 3 feet away from the bar. Now the bartender's coming over. Oh, man, it's really close. And the bartender said, yes, sir. And the brain pulls a sly one on the body. It says, oh, listen, I'm just meeting somebody here, and I'm not in a hurry, so why don't you wait on that guy? And you should have heard the crowd down inside. What the hell's he doing up there? There's a guy telling the guy over there, what is all this stuff? And that was me explaining to the bartender that it wasn't serious. That's what it was. I didn't want him to think I had to be there, and of course the body didn't understand any of this. They just dealt in the animal instincts. They didn't understand what being a real man was all about. And finally the bartender came back, and I ordered a triple vodka martini on the rocks, and down it went, and then everything was all right. And that you know what that alcohol did. It fixed those legs, it fixed that stomach, and put out the fire, and it went out into those arms, and all of a sudden we were just as calm as could be. And I looked in the mirror. Drunks always look in the mirror. And smiled and gave a couple of those little things. Look at those clear blue eyes. And I said to myself, I wonder what has me so upset. I wonder what it is, and isn't it lucky that I have alcohol to calm me down? Can you imagine having all this tension and not having something like alcohol to solve these problems? So this is where I had reached the decision to drink a little bit earlier in the day. Was through pure physical necessity. And I had to use a way of explaining this, and I rationalized it a day at a time, gradually getting earlier and earlier into the day. And then there came a time when I finally got so bad flying I had to go to the doctors, and they agreed that we had a serious problem that involved expensive airplanes, that's what they were really worried about. And I was... nothing physical could be found that was causing the high blood pressure, trembling hands, upset stomach, blackouts, and this feeling that I was going to fall out of the airplane or whatever it was. So the psychiatrist was the final made the final diagnosis and attributed it to a childhood fear of airplanes, that this was the real problem, and if we didn't fly anymore, we would be all right. And so I knew that was wrong, but I had given up making any waves anymore. I just went along for the ride. Whatever happened, happened. And besides, I was a born loser. I had reached that philosophy of life. And a born loser is a person who, no matter how hard he tries, is going to lose. It was determined when you were born that you were going to lose. And when you finally come full circle in the born loser outlook on life, you have one inescapable conclusion, and that is, well, if you're a born loser, why try? And then I went, right, why try? And then when you finally get there, then you reach advanced living, and all you do is complain about life. You don't try anymore. You just sit back and complain about how unjust it is and how you tried for years and nothing ever turned out, and give me another drink. And that was sort of where I had come. And so I was retrained, no longer a pilot, but they said, well, the guy's got some skills in aviation matters, and I was made an air traffic controller, and now I was bringing the planes in bad weather, all my buddies, and I'm sure that if they knew the shape I was in, they would not have gone flying when I was on duty, but I feel very fortunate. I never had an accident or somebody got killed or anything like that. And I did do that work for about a year and a half. And especially in the last year of my drinking overseas, I was in charge of a small radar unit, and we went around on deployments and would survey in the gear and draw up the approaches for planes to fly. And we got through all right, mostly because everybody else did the work, and I just hung around being in charge. And, you know, the guy in charge doesn't do anything anyway, so I just drank vodka and tried to calm my fears. And during that year, I got into daily drinking. I lost around 55 pounds due to malnutrition, couldn't eat. It was the most frightening year I've ever had. All I did was just sit around being terrified. I was terrified of being alone. I was terrified of being with people. Thought about suicide a lot. Thought about, just throwing up. Inability to just take care of anything, to get laundry done, just keep putting on the same underwear. You know this routine. Just awful. I just hate to think of that year, but somehow I got through it and got back here to Virginia, down in Quantico, and I was going to some school to become a general or something. I don't even remember going to that school. And I was in class one day, and my body stood up to ask a question or something, and I had a seizure. Now, a seizure is a new dimension in alcoholism. When you used to have a convulsion, you have stepped beyond some of the other things that you've done. And it's hard to ignore a convulsion or a seizure. If you've ever been in an AA meeting, somebody has a seizure, you know it generally interrupts the whole meeting, and that's what happened to that class. So my alcoholism had now sort of caught up, and I was in an ambulance in a day or two and on up to Bethesda Naval Hospital to find out what caused the seizure. That's what happened to that class. So my alcoholism had now sort of caught up, and I was in an ambulance in a day or two and on up to Bethesda Naval Hospital to find out what caused the seizure. And a few days later, I went into DTs, and that explained to everyone's satisfaction what may have caused the convulsion. And I ended up in the nut ward up there for 6 months. That's a long time, just to be locked up in a hospital, but that's where I was. I had some fun experiences in there. I had some bad experiences. It was a miserable period overall. The first time of getting sober, being around the group therapy sessions, listening to the psychiatrist, going to clay class, coming back from clay class, getting low grades in clay class, you know. Okay, for those of you who've been in the nut ward, I'll have to share this. Somebody came in and they put their cigarette out in my ashtray and it broke. Okay. So, while I was there, I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. I did not think much of this. We were marched into a meeting. I didn't want to be there. It was awful. But I was there and I heard about AA and filed it away for future reference. When I was released, I did drink again for about 3 days, and as an outpatient. I had to come back up and go to the clay class and go to the therapy, but I was home, and so I was driving back and forth, and during those 3 days, I'll never forget it, I had to bring vodka into the nut ward, and into the parking lot, and I'd be down there every 2 or 3 hours, and I just knew that the psychiatrists were starting to look at me kind of out of the corner of their eye. I think they saw something was happening, and that I was not going to be sent back to duty, and so it was an emergency. So over that weekend, knowing I was going to get caught on Monday, because I would probably get really drunk over the weekend, I called AA, called Intergroup. And my plan was to get a membership card from AA, and then to bring it in Monday morning and say, God damn, I joined AA and I got drunk. And look what happened to me. And I would use AA to explain all my problems. That was my motive. Some of us didn't come here with honorable motives, as you can see. As a matter of fact, I don't know who did come here with honorable motives. The more I think about it, most of us were forced in here. And I know some of you that may be new, you feel that you're here under duress, and it wasn't your idea to come to AA. You didn't start out as a child to want to become president of AA. That was not one of your not on your hit parade. And so we get here under various pressures. We get here because our wives may announce that the family's going on a trip minus us to an unknown address. Or I got all these examples. The boss calls you in to meet your replacement. Have you had that happen? And the doctor tells you not to buy any long-playing records. Okay. And more recently, the judge looks down, and this is my favorite example, and this is just in the last 5 years or so. The judges are starting to hit the gavel and look down and say, young man, that'll be 1 year in jail or 1 AA meeting. And a guy stands out there thinking and thinking and thinking. Oh, man. Oh, no. So, we get here under pressure, and that's how I got here, was under pressure. I didn't want to be here, get the pressure off my back, and a big sponsor came into my home and took over. And said, hello, my name's Bill. This is a 12-step call. I talk, you listen. Here we go. We're going to a meeting. This is the plan. Don't drink. Okay, let's look in the toilet. And he went in the toilet, found the vodka. I said, why the hell did he know to look in the toilet? Okay, get in the car. And we're going to the meeting. He says, what are you doing? Sitting back there thinking about what you're going to tell me about not going tomorrow night? And I said, how do you know I was going to tell you about not going tomorrow night? Well, you're going tomorrow night. You don't have anything to do. I already checked with a nut wart. I talked to your wife. You've never been out in 5 years. You don't have anything to do. There's nothing on your agenda except going to the bathroom. All right. So that was it. And guy just jumped in, took over, and that's the best thing that ever happened to me, because if he took over, I wasn't. And therein lies the secret to our initial success in AA, and that is in getting out of the driver's seat and letting somebody else run our life for a while so that we can stay alive long enough to figure out what's wrong. And there's what happens to me in AA. I'm really grateful that I sort of just stayed sober for a long time out of fear of sponsor and out of just trying to keep showing up at meetings. And I loved it when people would come up and pat me on the head and say, you're a good boy, keep coming back. And, geez, I went to many a meeting just so somebody would pat me on the head and say, we're glad to see you. Boy, we're glad to see you. Sit over here. Yeah, have some coffee. And I just loved that. I could hardly wait for the next night. Go in there and say, hey, we're glad to see you. And I love that. I like people telling me they were glad to see me and keep coming back, keep coming back. And that kept me coming back, was you all telling me, keep coming back. So some time went by, and I was sober, and I had a couple years, and I said, AA's marvelous. Isn't it marvelous to be sober? Isn't it marvelous to get your life straightened out? Isn't it marvelous to be happy? And then I said to myself, if I'm so happy, why am I so miserable? What's going on around here? You people said if I came in and didn't drink and went to meetings, everything would be fine. And I went to meetings and I didn't drink, and everything was only fine because I said it was fine. If I was honest, it wasn't fine. I was feeling rotten. I didn't know how to handle sobriety. I was still of the opinion that the world was comprised mostly of bad people, that I still had to confront death eventually, in which time I would go to purgatory and they were going to get me for all this stuff. I had a lot of problems there, and they didn't go away by not drinking. And I said, what's going wrong? What am I doing wrong here? Somebody said, hey, you ever heard the steps? What steps? I said, well, they're in the book there, and you ought to get around to them. Maybe you can have something happen. And so I did. I got around to the steps because I was in pain. That's why I got around to the steps. That's why I came into AA, because I was in pain. I have an illness. I have alcoholism, and alcoholism causes discomfort. And discomfort eventually causes us to take action. And the action relieves the discomfort. Or we drink. There's those two choices. And I feel grateful that I was forced into taking the steps. I didn't go running after them eagerly. I didn't go charging in there because I saw all the benefits. I became so uncomfortable that I said, what's going on in here? And they said, well, come on in. These are a bunch of principles that you can learn about, and they're spiritual. And I went, oh, it's too bad that they're spiritual, because I'm not. And you people said, you're not spiritual? And I said, no, I'm not. And it's too bad. And they said, yes, it is, because you lose. So I lose? They said, yeah, you lose, because this is a spiritual program. If you're not spiritual, forget it. You're going to lose. And I said, well, maybe I'm a little spiritual. A little bit. Maybe I'm spiritual and I don't know it. And some of you said, well, we see a little bit of spirituality about you. We see that somewhere inside of you there's a lot of good that's just in there that wants to get out. We see concern on your face about a new person. We see you empathize when somebody's given a talk, and maybe even a little tear sneak into your eye, as much as you would like to deny that it's even there. And we see you clearing your throat or swallowing hard a couple times when some housewife is telling her sad story. And you're sitting there and kind of choked up, but you're pretending that you're not feeling those feelings, because that's not you. You're not that kind of a person. You're not that good. And I denied all the goodness in me. And when I denied any of that goodness, I denied God. And I denied my spirituality, and I was uncomfortable. And my spirituality was going to come out, or I was going to get drunk. And that's when they pushed me into the steps. And they said, well, you're either going to go into this area or you're going to die, because alcoholism is fatal, and there's no way to get out of it. You're going to have to grow or go. And, you know, after a few years, I knew that. You start knowing it. You start knowing that you're reaching your own moment of truth. You're going to choose one of two paths. You're going to start working on those steps, or you're going to go back to drinking. And it doesn't seem to be much middle ground. It's an optional program. It's suggested, but the pain takes away the choice. And that's what happens. You just start getting discomfort. And there's, you know, one way to relieve it, but you know the price you pay. You know the backlash from vodka. And it's almost through some kind of a second choice that I said, okay, I'm going to become spiritual if it kills me. And that was my attitude towards going in there. What is all this about? What is this higher power? What is prayer, meditation? What are inventories? What is admitting my defects to another person? What is honesty? God Almighty, these subjects are so heavy and they're so frightening to me. How am I going to do them? And your answer was, you're not going to do them alone. We're going to help you. And we're going to share with you. And we're going to do it on a daily basis. And we're going to have step meetings. And we're going to talk about these things. And we're going to teach you about you. We're going to teach you what a human being is and what we think will work for you. And we're going to show you the principles that have worked for 1 million people. And we got 1 million miracles. And you have to be like one of them. One of them. So come on in here. We'll tell you that it's going to work. You don't have any faith, we'll give you ours. You just stay with us. Are you willing to stick your hand out and let us lead you along? And yeah, oh God, you got to. I got to get out of this. And I'm very grateful you all did that. And you started teaching me about this thing. Mostly you taught me about me. And you said, look, you got to learn to like yourself. You got to find out that all those things about you just aren't true. You're just a person. You're a victim. Right out of that fourth step, a victim of these character defects. You're not responsible that all this happened to you. You're not guilty because you're an alcoholic. You're a person. And this happened to you, and this is where you're at, and now you have some answers, and now you can take responsibility, and you will make it. And I said, I am. I just couldn't believe it. But it started happening through sharing. All those people just kept sticking their hand out and saying, come on now, we can tell you what you are. You are a spiritual person. You are good. You do care. And I started caring. I started feeling what caring was all about. I really cared whether I stayed sober or not. I really cared how I felt. I really cared about becoming a better person. I didn't get very far, but I sure as hell cared about becoming a better person. Whatever that meant. But I knew it was the better direction that I'd ever gone in before. I just wanted to be better than I was. I just wanted to learn, how do you stop being self-centered? How the hell do you do it? I know I wanted to. How many times I wanted to not feel jealous when somebody else got a better deal? How many times I wanted to not feel envious when somebody else got the promotion or they inherited some money? And I wanted to just, I said, gee whiz, if I weren't self-centered, I could just be joyful that they got it. But I'm sitting over here going, why didn't I get it? Well, how can I learn to stop that? And they kept saying, you got to grow spiritually to stop that. And when you stop it, you're going to feel comfortable. And you're going to win. And then you can share in the joy of other people without being self-centered. And it took practice. And it takes practice every day. And every day we get challenged along those lines. And our old character defects keep flying up and we got to work on them again. But what a reward. What a reward to suddenly find out we are spiritual and that there is good in the world and that people care about each other and that all of my old ideas were wrong and that you don't hate me and you don't hate each other. That what's inside of you that wants to come out is a basic sense of love for each other and that AA brings this out. You come in here and you just can't believe what you're seeing. If you're new in AA, you probably don't understand what the hell, what are all these people so excited about? Why are they happy that this is happening? What's the angle? And the angle seems to be a higher power. There's only one angle in AA, that's some kind of a higher power. Those are the principles I think we were given. And they're ours. and nobody can take them away from us. All we can do is try and share them. If you're new tonight, maybe what I'm saying doesn't make sense. You say, what the hell's that guy talking about up there? Well, I'll tell you, 10 years ago, if you had told me I was going to be talking about God or a higher power in front of 500 or 600 people, I would have said, you're crazy. Never would I be doing that. But that's what I feel tonight. I feel that's what AA's given us. There'll come a day, if you're new, that you will be sober some months, I don't know how long it'll be, and you'll be home, probably, or in your car, but you'll be alone, and you may look in a mirror, or you may not, but you will suddenly realize that that journey that you've been on as an alcoholic, and only you know how awful it's been. It may be for 5 years, it may have been 10, it may have been 20 years. All alone, you've taken a journey that you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. And you know how awful it is. And there's going to come a day in AA when you're going to know all the way down inside that that journey's over. You're going to know it in your very soul that the journey is over and you're going the other way. And you're going to want to spread the joy. You're going to run out in the damn streets and tell people, hey, I'm going the other way. I'm going the other way. I can't hardly explain this. I'm going the other way. People are going, what's the matter with that person? And they're not going to understand that you're going the other way. And you're standing there and you're looking. You got a long way to go. You're so far down. Your health is borderline. You don't have any money. Your family's gone. And you're running around happy. And the reason you're happy is you know you're going the other way. Just the reverse in direction. Knowing that tomorrow you're not going to be lower than today. And that spark that happens is one of the most beautiful events in AA. And the second most beautiful event is you're going to know at the same time that you took the trip down alone, but you're going back up together. You're going to understand why you're going to make it. Because somebody's hand is out, and you've grabbed it, and they've said, I was there just a little while ago at that very bottom. Let me show you how we are going. Let us show you the way up. Because AA, it has been said, cannot open the gates of heaven and let us in. But it always has been able to open the gates of hell and let you out. And if you want to get out and follow the path, you just listen to everything that's said this weekend. Try a little of that prayer, and then share what you got. Thanks a lot.